Well,
Yeah.
one of the mantras Dan and I have on the show is that veterans, and we've kind of talked around this already, but veterans are, nobody's harder on veterans than other veterans. On the other hand, as we've discussed, there are a lot of civilians who feel like that veterans are a sacred cow and they don't want to go anywhere near something that could be controversial, like fraud in the VA, which is rampant. And so we're going to have to kind of help. I don't mean police in a literal sense, but we have to hold each other accountable and police each other.
Yep.
And so I don't know how, there's not an easy way to strike that balance of, veterans, cannibalizing each other and holding each other accountable. I don't know what that looks like, but it's gonna have to come with from within the house, I think.
This is the Veritable Veteran podcast, bringing truth and exposure to the struggles veterans and their families face post-military. Depression, anger, PTSD, suicide. Who am I? What do I do now?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Veritable Veteran podcast. This week we have Dan and Roger from the Tracer Burnout podcast. Let's get into the show. So, Roger and Dan, you guys started the Tracer Burnout podcast. And when did you guys start that?
A little over 2 years now.
Yeah, it's been more. Our first recording has been over 2 years. The idea was about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. So what made you guys want to do it in the first place?
Go ahead, Raj.
It's funny. So, spoiler alert: it was actually Dan's idea, but I'm jumping ahead. So I was in Boston attending the home base program. Has a really great TBI program that's through the Red Sox Foundation. It's called the Combat, which is a comprehensive brain and health and trauma. Really great for folks with TBI. I was getting ready to retire, and I'd kind of started putting my feelers out through the medical system and saying, hey, do I need to go to Walter Reed or whatever? And I had several people say, don't do it through them, do it through the Red Sox Foundation. So fast forward, I'm in Boston sitting in my hotel room. I just got off a phone call with kind of a mentor of mine who put some ideas in my head. And I pick up my phone. It's about 9:00 at night, and I text Dan. We're pretty much lifelong best friends. That's how I characterize it. You'll have to ask him. And I say, hey, Dan, I'm trying to get my arms around something, getting ready to retire. And I think I want to start a nonprofit or something, I don't know, involving veterans, but I can't really clamp down on this idea. What do you think? And I sent him that text, and he immediately texts me back and says, call me. And Dan, take it from here.
And he did. He called me right away, and then we talked. I pitched the podcast idea to him. I told him, hey, there are a lot of nonprofits and 501c3s and charities and programs out there for veterans, more than we could ever possibly list. And those guys are all very, very good at what they do. And rather than us two knuckleheads diving into those deep waters, why don't we start a podcast? Why don't we? Because this goes back to our, naivety, but there didn't seem to be a whole lot of podcasts out there about veterans telling their stories and talking about their time in service. You just see the same people on the news or on other people's shows. You see the same characters portrayed in movies or TV shows or books. And it's always, the super awesome guy who jumped off the back of a bald eagle into Berlin and strangled Hitler with his own mustache, with nothing by his side but an MRE spoon kind of thing. Or it's the guy that's got, PTSD so bad because he was the sole survivor of a mission that just went completely wrong. And now he's got crazy PTSD, and He's struggling to pay his bills because he can't hold down a job, and his one and only child, because he's also a widower, his one and only child is a sick little girl, and
Like
she
the
can't
most
get the help
sympathetic
that she
person
needs
ever.
because
Yeah.
he has no,
Yeah.
and so he ends
Yep.
up, robbing a bank or something and having a total breakdown. Those are the two types of veterans that are most often portrayed in movies or TV shows or whatever. And I'm not saying that those cases don't exist. Obviously they do, but that's like the 0.0001% of the veteran population. Most veterans just, they serve their 3 years, 4 years, 15 years, 25 years, whatever it is. And then they get out and they go back into, the next chapter, whether it's, teaching or making movies or being a stay-at-home mom or whatever the case is. And so Roger, I pitched it to Roger hey, let's let all these veterans tell their stories of service, how they wound up in the service they did, the experiences they had, the people they met that impacted them, why they got out when they did, and how their time in service has changed them. Because I think those stories are valuable, not just for their family and their friends to maybe better understand them and future generations, but I think that the civilian population who doesn't really know anything about the military life except for what they see in Saving Private Ryan,
Yeah.
uh,
0 Dark 30. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Lone
all that they
Survivor.
know
Yeah.
about the military life.
Yep.
So let's shed a little light on it and help some of these veterans, maybe feel heard or get some things off their chest that they haven't been able to really talk about or
Yeah.
express. So that was the idea. I pitched it to Roger, and Roger put down his wine and cheese
Yes.
at his 5-star hotel.
My as an aristocrat of landed gentry, yes, that's exactly what I'm.
And Roger said, "That's a really good idea."
So
and then he took my very simple idea of going around with some recording devices and just recording
with a Fisher Price
us talking
recording
to
device,
veterans.
yes.
And then it was like, we're going to have a studio and we're going to get cameras and all this, fancy setup. And we're going to have a website,
We're gonna have a designer make our logo. Yeah.
Yep. Copyright attorneys and like all this stuff. So he took my very simple idea and took it to the 11th floor and jumped off with me.
You're welcome, Dan. You're welcome. So I've been carrying this with me because, do you know the movie Fury?
Mm-hmm.
Brad Pitt. So believe it or not, I actually haven't seen it, but I'm keenly aware of it. So I remember years ago when it came out, and I saw a preview for it and heard some Hollywood chatter about it, and come to find out, it's not even it's a fictional telling of World War II. And I just remember hearing like, how many millions of men came home from World War II stoically never discussed anything that they did or had seen during those years under arms during the war, and they just took all those stories with them to their graves. And so the movie Fury comes out. I'm like, oh great, we get to hear one of those stories. And come to find out, it's completely from top to bottom fiction. I just remember being like angry about that. Like, we have to make stuff up. And so I'm carrying that around with me. Dan pitches this idea to me, and I'm like, yes, these stories that need to be told, we can now tell them one at a time. It's a monumental task, but we're up for it. I mean, Dan and I are Army brats. We grew up, for the most part, here in the Fayetteville, Fort Bragg area and other places, but we were here growing up as friends. And, we had guys in the neighborhood who, there's a couple I can think of off the top of my head where, my dad was like, hey, old man McGillicuddy on the corner down there, he got a Silver Star in Korea. And, no, who knew that the old guy who tells you to get off his grass is actually a war hero? Like, that happens more often than not, especially in communities like the one where we live. And we just wanted to give some of those people a voice.
But the POW story, I met a guy. So I was selling insurance. I was working at Aflac, and I was selling insurance out in the middle of BFE, Oklahoma. So BFO, I guess. And
BFO.
yeah, it was a little town, and I went to this feed store, and I walked in, and there was some young kid working the counter, and he was kind of like, I was like, hey, I work with Aflac. I know you guys are busy. You don't want to take any of your time, like to schedule an appointment. And he was like, you got to talk to that guy over there. And I was like, okay. And I'm like looking, and I don't see a guy, right? I see like a little closet with a door like halfway shut, and I hear what sounds like a movie playing. And I'm like, the heck? So I walk over, and I see the door partway open, and I guess he heard our conversation. He kind of opens the door, and he's like, hey, what's up? And there's this old guy, and he's literally watching like a war movie. I don't even remember the movie. But he's watching a war movie. And I was like, it's a little weird. And the whole room, this whole closet, it's not, it was maybe 6 feet by 6 feet. It was just this little, like a broom closet. And it was lined from wall to wall with war movies, just DVDs and VHS tapes from floor to ceiling. And I was like, whoa, dude, you have a collection. So I start talking to him, and he's like, and he volunteers all this information. I ended up staying at this place for almost 3 hours. I sat down with this guy for like 3 hours, and he told me everything. He joined I believe he was in the Army, and then he got recruited basically to work for the CIA, the Secret Air, or what's the one that they called it?
The OSS?
No, it wasn't OSS. It was in Vietnam, and it was the like the Special Air Service or something. It wasn't the SAS, like the British SAS. There was some,
Probably the SOG.
It was like it was basically disguised as like it was disguised as like just like an airline kind of thing, where they were like the civilian airline company, that they were trying to play it off. Anyway, he got shot down.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I cannot think of the name of it now. It's going to bug me. Anyway, he was a part of this. He was part of the CIA. So he got shot down over Vietnam in this little like dual engine plane. The pilot's dead. He gets captured, and he's literally telling me this, like on his wrist, he has like the handcuff with the briefcase, and the Vietnamese guys that they captured him, they come over and they just take an AK and just butt stroke his wrist until it's just mush, and they pull the handcuff off, and they've got him. They capture him, right? And he lived in this prisoner of war camp in Laos for it was like 2 or 3 years. Like he was there for a long time. And he was talking about how he's like, he's like making jokes the whole time. He's like, what's the fastest thing in Laos? And I was like, I have no idea. And he goes, whatever made it across from one side of my little cell to the other alive, because everything that ran through there, I caught it and I ate it. It was like bugs, rats, snakes, anything. If it was in there, he caught it and ate it. Then he's like, what are the 2 best things about being a prisoner of war? And I was like, I don't know. He goes, you lose a shit ton of weight and you make a shit ton of money. He's like, you can't spend any money and you don't eat any food. But this dude it was crazy. Like his story was nuts. And then at the end of it, it was really cool because he starts tearing up and like crying. And I was like, are you okay? And he's like, I'm more than okay, because I don't get to tell that story very often, because most people won't sit and talk with me. They won't listen. And he's like, so I'm going to cry a lot tonight because I rehashed all that. He's like, but it's okay, because that's a good thing. I'm still processing it, and he gave me a big hug, and, and I've tried to get a hold of him again, to have him on the podcast, or even to just go talk to him again. And I cannot get a hold of him. I've called his number, because I got his number and I've called it several times, and it just keeps going to, I can't remember. I haven't called him in a while, but I want to say it was disconnected last time I tried, but it was a really neat story. And he was awesome. Had a great attitude about it, but he wrote a book that when he wrote it the first time, they told him, you absolutely cannot publish this because it had classified information in it. So they shut it down. And then when all of this stuff got declassified about the stuff in Laos, he was actually part of the largest cross-border prison rescue that took place. So there's
him and Chuck Norris?
all these, what's that? Yeah, Chuck.
Him
Yeah,
and Chuck Norris?
It's Chuck Norris. Yeah, Chuck Norris got him. But he, when they found him, they brought him to a hospital in the Philippines, and they didn't know who he was, because he wasn't like listed with any units or anything. He was just this American dude that they're like, we don't know your name. And he's telling them, and they're like, okay, we don't know who you are. It was weird, but it was a crazy story. But he was a super cool dude. And he actually worked in the Oklahoma National Guard. He had a cool story. But he was a cool dude. And he had a really good attitude regarding everything that happened. But it was cool talking to him.
Well, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, right?
Boys.
That's awesome. I mean, and that I cannot tell you the number. I think most of the people, so the number, is pretty much everybody that I've had on the show has told me at some point, why do you want to interview me? I don't have a story to tell. And I'm like,
that's
stop.
the one.
Yeah. I'm like, stop right now. Like, just quit, because you're already selling yourself short, which is just not okay. If you joined the military, you have a story to tell, right? And that you did some things, you experienced things that you would never have experienced. You've experienced things that most of America has not experienced, most of the world has not experienced. And you need to tell it, because even if it's not the most exciting, like, oh, you're not some Navy SEAL, Green Beret, Delta Force kicking in doors, you still did stuff, and you still deserve to tell your story, because it helps you and it'll help somebody else, because it makes somebody else somewhere feel less alone, because they're like, wow, there are normal people that serve in the military and didn't go and, like you said, jump off the back of a bald eagle and, strangle Hitler. It's just these normal, everyday veterans that are like, yeah, I did my 4 years and I got out. And the current community and the current, it's not necessarily like a stigma, but the current mindset is, if I didn't deploy 17 times and kill 300 people and get blown up 12 times and take 4 bullets for my country, I didn't serve. And it's like, so I completely, that's one of the main reasons I wanted to start it as well. I started it, for long form content, like a platform for long form content, but also to do interviews with people just to have their stories told, and I tell people all the time, I'm constantly telling people, stop downplaying yourself. I had a guy, he did 20 years in the military and 30 years as a cop. And it was like at the same time, because he was a reservist. So it was like overlapping. And he's like, I don't really have any stories to tell. I'm like, you're a liar. Like, dude, I was a cop for like 4 years and I had some wild stories to tell. There is no way you were a cop for any amount of time and you don't have some crazy stories to tell. And you did 20 years in the military and he deployed multiple times. And I was like, bro, come on, dude. Like,
but it's part of the culture and the ethos, really across the branches, except Navy SEALs, of course, to deflect as much shots fired, right? To deflect as much this attention. You want to diffuse it because you don't want to take it on yourself, because it's a team effort, right? I mean, that's the culture. It's especially in the Marine Corps and the Army. I know that for sure. I'm not going to take credit for the things that, my unit has done, because that would, it's kind of gross, to be honest. And so we often take that with us past our service. To your point, we don't want to talk about it because we feel like it's being braggadocious.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had a guy that I deployed with. He was in my squad, and I hadn't talked to him in a long time. We just kind of, grew apart. Life happened, and I just hadn't talked to him in a while. And he shot me a message and he was like, I want to apologize. And I was like, for what? And he's like, well, for a long time, I assumed you were just some grifter veteran who was out there telling crazy war stories, and all you wanted to do was get famous and write a book and make a bunch of money. Yeah. And I was like, and then he continues and he's like, I finally listened to some of your podcast episodes. He's like, and I started looking at your content, and he's like, and I realized, like, that's not you at all. And that's, so, but that's when someone that you serve with sees you, sometimes that's like their immediate reaction is just like, oh, look, another veteran out there just trying to sell themselves. And, I was like, I don't blame you for thinking that, because that's what most people are doing. And it's, until you find out otherwise, it's like, I would probably assume that too. If I look over and saw just, some guy that I served with who I know didn't do a whole lot or did the same stuff I did, I'd be like, man, screw that dude. Like, he's telling, the same stories that we did. And, so I understand that too, because it's like, nobody wants to be, the hero, because it's like, they don't want the attention. Like you said, unless you're, a Navy SEAL and that's all you want is all the attention. So
all of it.
I mean,
But
it's a sad state of affairs that there are people out there like that. But I mean, come on, let's be honest. Anyone that's served has served with people that are like that too. So why should it be surprising that those same characteristics, resurface once they are out of the military? So that's fine. Our platform is not about that. It is quite simply to let you talk and to tell your story. And obviously, even if you only did 3 years, there's no way we could cover all of that in a handful of hours. I mean, that's 3 years is a long time, believe it or not.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we kind of go over. It's a pretty wide range, and there are some things that we will delve more into as those experiences come up in the conversation. But it should really serve as a way to open the door for friends and family members to ask more in-depth questions to our guests, to learn more about their experiences from the people that are closest to them. I think that we are just really, yes, we're preserving their stories and their legacy, but I really hope that we are opening that door for more in-depth conversation from the people who care about them most. That's what I'm really hoping for.
yeah. Well, and I think I know from my experience, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but I know that when people have come on my show and been open and talked about things with me, it has uh, allowed them to be more open with their family about it as well, because they've shared it, and it's kind of like, okay, I've already said it, once or twice or three times now. So it's a little bit easier to have you guys had that? Have you guys had that feedback?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And
will.
that,
Sometimes it's immediate.
mhm.
Sometimes we'll have, we'll wrap up the conversation or whatever it is, and then, we'll be talking afterwards, and whoever the guest is will just be like, man, I haven't talked about that stuff in years, or I haven't thought about that experience in 5, 10 years, whatever the case is,
Or thought about it at all.
or thought about it at all. Yeah. And then sometimes it'll take a few weeks or a couple of months, and then we'll get a random email saying, hey guys, I I really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys opening it up, and it made me really do some deep self-reflection and having some difficult conversations with friends and family members. And thanks. I really appreciate it. I had buried that experience down deep or whatever it is, because we talk about everything.
Everything.
Obviously, no two people's experiences are exactly the same. Their motivations for serving are different. There are a lot of similarities too, but not everybody experienced, sexual assault. Not everybody experienced, drug and alcohol abuse while they were in uniform. Not everybody experienced,
Being in the brig.
yeah,
Yeah.
spending most of their time in uniform in the brig. That that happened.
We had one of those.
And then not everybody heals the same way post service. We've had people talk about going to some pretty dark places. And then we've talked to some people that have said that their support group was fantastic, and they never, their friends, family members, whoever their support group was, never let them get that far down the hole. But you can take something away from everybody's experiences.
No, I completely agree. And that's if you are in my audience or their audience and you're listening and you're wondering if you have a story to tell, you do. So there, I'll just put that plug in there, because it's so frustrating to me when they're like, "Oh, I don't have a story." I'm like, "Yes, you do. Stop it."
Yeah.
But in so there was actually the last podcast episode that I did. It was just talking about that Rand suicide study that was done in 2025. It was a veteran suicide study. And I just kind of went through the study and, laid out the main points of it.
Yep.
One of the main points was veterans with, I think it was 2 or less years of service have a higher suicide risk. I think maybe it was even 3 years or less, because, and again, that's likely because they were forced out for some reason, whether it was discipline, medical hardship, whatever it was, they didn't get to complete their service. And so when you're talking about, some guys that, they've only served, 2 or 3 years, have you guys had that, where they just have a very self-deprecating view of their service and like themselves because of that?
Um, Not necessarily because they were, they didn't complete their term, although that has been the case a couple of times. Most of the people that we have talked to have been able to complete their service in their own terms for for the most
At least
part.
for the most part. I mean,
Right.
Sometimes it's maybe people who were looking to do 20 or had a specific goal in mind, but an injury forced them out.
Yeah.
We've
a
had
lot of those.
we've had a few
Yeah.
people who the injuries stacked up, or they had a catastrophic one,
Yeah.
and that ended their service early. But I think most of the people who say that they don't have a story to tell are obviously they're being hard on themselves, but I think that maybe they only did a few years, but then they fall into that. I see the movies and I see what these guys are doing. I turn on the news and
They
I
see the vet
see,
bros.
yeah, and
Yeah.
or I turn on social media and I see all these people, and my experiences don't stack up to theirs. So I'm just whatever. And then some people, honestly, they do their 3-4 years, whatever the case is, and maybe their experiences weren't great. Maybe they had some bad stuff happen to them, and they try to distance themselves as much as possible from the service, to try to get away from those experiences. We've talked to a couple of people like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple people tell me they didn't even want to come on just because they just don't want to talk about it. They're like, my experience was not good, and I just really don't want to, talk about it, on air or, on a recording just because they don't want to relive it. So it's, yeah, I understand that. But um, I wrote down a question because I wanted to ask you guys, of the people that you guys have interviewed, how many of the veterans that have gotten out have talked about how difficult the transition was? Like just kind of a percentage, like that you would think.
I mean, way more than half.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess
Like,
it
do you
depends
feel
on
the
the kind of.
majority
I
have
guess it
struggled
depends
in
on like the
some
kind
way?
of difficulty, because some
Yeah.
people got out, and they just didn't know what they wanted to do next, and so they spent a few years, bouncing around from job to job, trying to
Yeah.
figure
A
out
lot
what
of that.
that next calling or mission is. But I don't think that that's necessarily, I don't think that's necessarily about them not being able to transition from the military to civilian life. I think that that's part of just re, you know finding your next passion or finding your next um calling.
Finding your why.
Yeah. Yeah. I just it's interesting because I mean I know I've had a lot of people tell me, most of the people that tell me this are, well, the when they say like, not everybody struggles and it's not hard to get out, and it's like those are the people that they just seem like they're, I guess they mostly seem like they're not very genuine. Like they're almost just kind of like hiding behind that bravado mask. And, it's
Yeah.
like, and I'm not saying that people are able to get out and not have a hard time. Like that's, if you can, awesome. Like I'm glad. I just know that I struggled and most of the people that I've talked to have had some kind of difficulty getting out when they got out. It was like they had all this stuff lined up and then everything kind of fell apart, and then they ended up, going down a path of these toxic coping mechanisms and struggling to kind of just readjust to that lifestyle or to the lifestyle because I don't know about you guys, I don't know about your guys' service. I joined right out of high school. When I graduated and 2 months later I was gone. So I didn't have an adult life outside of the military until I got out in 2017. Like my entire adult life, my entire working career was in the military until I got out. So it's like people were like, well, it's not hard to transition. And it's like, okay, sometimes it's not. For some people, it isn't. But for a lot of people, that's the first time that they've ever entered into the like civilian workforce outside of like what they did when they were in high school or whatever. It's for the first time in their adult life, they're not in the military. And it's just, that was my personal experience. And I've talked to a lot of other people that had a pretty similar experience. And it's not trying to blame the military necessarily. It's just saying that transition, I mean, it's like I've said in the past on a couple different episodes, it's like you're on a train going about 80 miles an hour and then you jump off. And it's like, oh, your service is over, bye. And then you just get pushed off the back. And it's like, okay, cool. When you hit the ground, it's hard because like the world is moving in a completely different direction and at a completely different pace. And it's like, no matter how much you prepare for it, it can help you, but it's still going to be at some level difficult, and it's just, talking to some people about it, they struggled obviously a lot more than others, but I was just curious to see if that's, kind of the experience you guys have had.
Yeah.
I think there are people, and I wouldn't know what the percentage is, but there are people serving who their service is their entire identity. And once they leave the service for whatever the reason, they've lost their entire identity and they have problems adjusting. I get that. And then there are people who join the service for a specific reason, for money for college, for, or they weren't ready to, go into, 4 more years of school after high school.
They're running from something.
Or
Yeah.
maybe they're just trying to get out of a bad situation, whatever the case is. But once they have achieved that goal, they're financially stable. They've been able to get some education. They've gotten some life experience. They've traveled a little bit. Whatever that goal was, after 3, 4, 6 years, whatever the case is, they get out and they have no problems, easing back into civilian life because they came in with a specific goal in mind. They achieved it and they got back out. They did not make the uniform their entire being. So, I mean, it really is a case by case basis, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. So I know we haven't discussed your guys' service at all, like in our, off air conversations and things. I'd love to hear, just from each of you kind of what, your guys' experience was, what led you into the military, and then kind of what your experience was getting out, and even just your time in the military.
Go ahead, Rush.
Dan, you're the eldest. Okay. You insist. So Dan was 2 years ahead of me in school. So he'll tell his story, but he enlisted right out of high school too. So that was kind of my plan. Again, growing up in the Fayetteville, Fort Bragg area, that's here when you go to the high school guidance counselor, it's what college are you going to or which military service are you joining? Like they don't really offer much else to you. And, I'm third generation Army. I didn't really consider doing anything else. I was planning on enlisting. My mother twisted my arm into at least trying college. So at the last minute, my senior year, I applied to East Carolina University, which is known as the Harvard of Eastern North Carolina. Very hard to get into. Not really. So I signed up for ROTC my freshman year just because, I figured it would be an easy A and it would at least be something that held my interest, but I wasn't really planning on doing 4 years of college. I had zero intention on doing any more school after high school. I was kind of over the whole thing. But I started going to PT events and doing things outside of what the non-scholarship or non-contracted cadets were doing, and I got offered a scholarship. And so I accepted. This would have been the fall of 2000. So the following, couple months later, March of 2001 is when I signed on the dotted line for they had what they call a pocket scholarship, which is, they have them to hand out for walk-ons basically. So I signed on the dotted line in March of 2001, and a few months later, the Twin Towers came down, and we find ourselves in not one but 2 different wars from the time I signed on that line to the time I commissioned in 2004. So I wanted to be an infantryman. The Army gave me my second choice, which was artillery, but it did give me my first choice of duty assignment, which is the center of the universe, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I graduated from Field Artillery Officer Basic course, and about a month and a half later, I was on an OP in Afghanistan in the 82nd Airborne Division. So life comes at you fast. So
Yeah.
I did an Afghanistan rotation, came home, did an Iraq rotation. I was there during the surge. I dropped a packet to branch to civil affairs, which is in the Army Special Operations world. It is not Special Forces, but Special Operations Forces. And I became a civil affairs officer after that, never really looked back. So just to kind of keep it short, most people don't know what civil affairs is. We're the ones that kind of focus on the civil component of what's going on in the battlefield. So we're not the door kickers. We're not the intel guys. We're kind of like a third option. So the ones that are kind of your experts on what the civilians are up to, good, bad, and different, and how that could kind of help shape the battlefield. And I retired in the summer of 24 and returned back here to Fort Bragg. And yeah, I've done a couple different jobs since I retired. Right now, I'm doing some contracting stuff on Fort Bragg, which is pretty cool, kind of in my wheelhouse based off my experience, and doing this show with Daniel.
I like it.
Yeah.
Concise and to the point.
And another thing, no, I'm just kidding. And I'm happily married with 4 kids. If you want one of them, just let me know. I'll send them to you.
I've got 6 kids, and I think we're full up. Maybe.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, Dan, so before we get into your story, Dan, did you guys go to the same school and you guys were friends growing up, and then is that the story?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
both of our dads were in the Army. And so, wherever they PCS'd off to, they, always came back here to Bragg. So Roger and I were usually together for a few years, and then one of us would leave and come back, and then the other one of us would leave and come back. But by the time we were in high school, his dad had already retired. My dad was, doing his last few years. He had already decided that he was going to retire. So we did pretty much all of high school together. But I think I was probably always going to join the Army. It was just what I always wanted to do. I always thought it was so cool that every few years we got to live somewhere else. I mean, I was born in West Germany. I spent, years with when my dad was stationed in the Middle East. Came here, Virginia, exotic Canada. We lived there for a year when my dad was teaching at the War College. Crazy, exotic, far off Canada. Wow. Strange places that the Army will take you.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that it was always what I was going to do. My parents tried to get me to go to college. My older brother was already in college, and I was like, nope, this is for me. And my dad told me, like, I don't know, maybe a week or 2 weeks, whatever, before I went off to basic training, he was like, you're not going to make it. You don't respect authority. You don't like telling, or you don't like doing what people tell you to do, and you're just not going to be able to make it a few years, let alone a career. And then
Did you make it, Dan?
I made it a little over 23 years. So I mean, I'd say I've brought this up to him.
You're pretty close.
You
I mean,
outlasted
you're
them.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
you fooled them all for 23 years. Well done.
Yeah, I enlisted for 4 years, right out of high school. I mean, I enlisted while I was still in high school, but I took off for Fort Benning, home with the infantry, right after graduation. And I was only going to do a few years. I was going to get away from school. I mean, I wasn't a bad student, but if I didn't care about the subject, then I wasn't going to excel. I'm not a math and science person. So I was just going to do 4 years and then get out and go to school. I was about 6 months out from having to really make that decision. And then September 11th happened, and I re-enlisted like 2 days later. And that was it. I was like, nope, nope, stay in. So I did 20 plus years, a few tours in Afghanistan. I never did Iraq. The Army just didn't want to send me to Iraq, but they sure liked sending me to Afghanistan a lot. And I did a
You
tour in
didn't
the
miss
Balkans
much.
too. Drill sergeant, OC, Op 4. I loved being the infantry because we were good at everything, masters of nothing, but anything from police calling the parking lot to, crawling up mountains on all fours, trying to catch a guy, in a chest rack in sandals, at 10,000 feet while you're humping around, a couple 100 pounds of gear. I loved it. I loved it. But I retired in 2021, and we were still in the middle of the lockdowns, masking and all that COVID nonsense. The lady gave me my DD-214 and my retirement flag and pin from behind a shield. And she had a face shield on also, and
Thank
a
you for your
mask
service.
on under that. It's ridiculous. So I got out and I came back home. My folks are here. And I had been away. I was never stationed here at Fort Bragg. My career would not have been a career if I had ever been stationed here. I probably wouldn't have made it past my first term because all my little clown show friends like Roger were still here.
Hey, resemble that.
But I came back here and I was just going to take a year to kind of decompress and figure out what I wanted to do. It's just me. I'm divorced. Both of my kids are off adulting now, so it's just me. And I'm a big history buff, and so when Roger gave me that text, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do next. I am going to do my part to preserve a little bit of history for these stories of people that would otherwise go unrecognized.
Yeah. No, I really like it. I love the idea of just telling stories, and no matter how, mundane they are, just telling it and it's like, this is your story, be proud of it, what you did, and I've actually talked to a couple people that they didn't join the military and they went a different route, and they may have connections with the military, they may not, but and this is usually when I'm dealing with like different organizations and things, they'll be on like the board or on the staff there, and they're like, hey, I'm so and so, I didn't serve in the military, I'm not cool. And it's like, stop. Like, first of all, just because you took a different path doesn't mean that you're worse than anybody else. Like, you chose a different path in life. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you worse. It just means you went a different way. So I've had several people say that, like, I'm not one of the cool guys. And it's like, stop. So I get it from both sides. It's just guys that join and they feel like, well, I didn't do anything, or guys that didn't join and they're like, well, I didn't do anything. And again, the people that I've met that have said that have crazy stories. Like when you really get to know them, they've done a lot in their lives. And it's like, dude, like this one guy was a journalist. He worked for like the Wall Street Journal, and he worked for the Washington Post, and like he was a White House correspondent at one point, and now he works for like a nonprofit up in New Hampshire. And he's like, well, I haven't really ever done anything. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, right. Yeah. Like gone around the world writing stories and, been at the White House and all this other stuff. But yeah, you're right. You've never done anything, loser. Like, come on.
Well, I mean, after spending 2 decades at war, I think there is a segment of the population that feels like maybe they didn't do enough.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
they have to kind of downplay themselves. And I mean, I agree, it's totally not necessary. You went where your life took you, and that's fine. And to be sure, after 23 plus years in the Army, there are plenty of not cool people in the Army too.
I know a few.
Yeah. I led a few. I was led by a few. I know several. Yeah. Oh my word.
Just because you
that's
didn't
one thing
serve
that,
doesn't mean your story's not cool.
yeah, that's something that gets me is like, it seems like in a lot of these just forums and communities and online. Obviously, social media is just a mess, but it's when you get into these different areas and you put out information. Like I try to put out stuff from both sides, like, just trying to keep kind of an objective viewpoint on things and saying, like, when there's something that comes out where, like when the VA said they were going to start looking for fraud and they're going to start reevaluating these things and they're going to put tougher restrictions on, disability claims looking for fraud, right? Everybody was just going ballistic about, how they're coming for our rights and all this other stuff. And it was like, okay, guys, calm down for a minute. I may not agree with what they're doing or how they're doing it, but they have to do something regarding the fraud. Okay. Cause they've said there's fraud, and all this other stuff. But the point is like veterans are like this untouchable, like taboo, like, talking
Yeah.
about their benefits. Like you don't talk
Yep.
about it. Like they're untouchable. Like we will not touch. And I'm like, who decided that? Like veterans are not this like super special elite class of human beings. Like
You're
you
right.
served your country. Like if you have a disability and they're paying you for it, cool. But like there are some really scummy dudes out there that are playing the system, making a bunch of money, and they don't deserve it. And it's
Yes.
When I was an OC at Fort Polk, one of my buddies was at the WTU, the Warrior Transition Unit, and his job was to make sure that, the whichever soldiers he had at the time, were making it to their appointments, that their paperwork was correct and everything. And man, some of those people that were coming through there were getting hundreds. I'll give you one example. I went to go pick him up for lunch one time. And if you've been to Fort Polk, there's not many options for lunch.
Not many options. No.
I
went to go
not,
pick
but
him up.
I've heard stories.
But we were gonna go to lunch. So I swung by there to pick him up, and I'm waiting there for him at the CQ desk or whatever it was. And this young service member comes in, and she has a walker, like a neck brace, a spine brace. Her leg is in a walking boot, and she's just crushing along. And it's like, my God, man, what happened to her? And he was like, man, I'll tell you about it in 6 months or whatever it was. She's almost out the door. I don't want to put her business out there, till she's gone. So a few months later goes by, and he's like, hey, check this out. So he pulls up his Facebook or social media or whatever it was, and it's this picture it's this woman who's she's doing professional bodybuilding and like doing all these competitions and stuff. And sure enough, it was that same soldier who had been, just barely holding it together there, but she was on 100% disability for all these physical ailments. And now she's out there competing, getting, as a professional bodybuilder. There is fraud, and it should absolutely be rooted out, all the way to the core, not just those perpetrating it, but those facilitating it.
Yeah.
And that's not just at the VA. That's across the board everywhere. But how can you not be for that?
And that was one of the things that and I get a ton of hate on those whenever I post videos like that, because they're like, oh, you're just supporting the VA trying to take away our benefits and you hate veterans and all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You nailed
that's
it.
what
You
we're
got
all
me.
about.
You
Yeah.
found me. You figured me out. Turns out I hate all of you. It's like, again, it's this like, it's this untouchable thing. Like we just don't talk about it. And like, there was a guy that came out. It was a lieutenant colonel. He was in front of Congress, and it was during the
I know who you're talking about.
veterans. Yeah. And he got up there and there's like a YouTube video and of him, like it's on YouTube. You can look it up. And all these veteran influencers were making these videos talking about how this guy said that if you're not a Purple Heart recipient, you shouldn't get disability. If you're not an amputee, you shouldn't get disability. If you didn't deploy, you shouldn't get disability and all this other stuff. And I was like, that dude sounds like a scumbag. So I go on and I'm like, I'm not perfect at it. I try to vet things before I post about it, because I try to watch the video and get from the source, not just from what somebody said. So I pull up this, I just Googled it and it's on YouTube. I'm like, okay. So I watch it. It's like 3 minutes long. he had an opening statement, which was about 3 or 4 minutes long. And then there was like a later segment that was about 2 minutes long where he answered a question. So total, it was like maybe 6 or 7 minutes of this guy talking. Never said any of those things. All he said was, we've had a massive increase in the amount of money we're spending on veterans. And veterans are sicker, less employed, more depressed, and more suicidal than ever before. He's like, so something we're doing, like what we're doing is
There's
not
a
working.
correlation. Yeah.
Right. And he's like, we're paying in tons of money, all this. And basically he was just saying, all he was saying was, you got guys that never deployed that are getting 100% for PTSD. You've got people that, are perfectly healthy getting 100% PTSD or 100% disability for physical ailments, but then they go and they, live life completely normally, unimpeded by any physical ailments. And all he's saying is paying more money and giving them money is not the answer. And it's bleeding the coffers dry. Like in general, he's just saying he's not saying that you don't deserve disability. He's not saying that, you have to be a Purple Heart, combat veteran to get any kind of disability at all. It's not what he said. But it's like, as soon as he said anything about, some veterans not deserving the benefits they have, it was like, whoa, dude, you can't say that. Like every veteran deserves every benefit and we need to bow down and kiss their feet. And I'm like, bro, have you ever met some of these veterans? Like, dude, they're straight douchebags. And they think everybody owes them everything. And I'm like, dude, shut up. Like,
So
come on.
I have a couple theories on this. One of them is I believe, this is totally my opinion, I believe that the VA disability payment system is kind of a way of the American public it's like paying guilt money to mostly GWAT veterans right now because they feel like we got hosed over. And so it's kind of like guilt money.
Yeah.
That's one theory. And then the other is, I mean, Dan and I, we don't really get political on the show, but take a look at what's going on, like with this Medicare scam going on in Ohio that's currently in the news right now, and then the one in Minnesota, and that's just 2 of the 50 states, right? I think there's a mentality of there's a trough, and everybody's at the trough, and we're going to get at the trough too.
Yes,
because we would be fools not to. And so you kind of mush those two things together, and it has created this perfect storm that you're describing.
I think there's more to it than that. That what Roger said is obviously, big components, but I think part of it is also the VA processes, all those things. And I haven't watched the video that you're referencing, or at least I don't think I have. But sicker, more suicidal, less employed veterans, spiking, whatever the numbers are. Part of that is in the VA processes, because how does the VA treat a lot of issues? Pills,
drugs,
pills, yeah,
yep, drugs. And what do those things? Because I've been on some of them. What do those things tend to do?
They either get you addicted, or they make you. They just numb you.
Even excluding addiction, which obviously there's a huge component depending on what you're on. But
yep. But a lot of them, they numb you, and they just affect your ability to live normally. So it's
you feel hazy or not in your right mind, so you can't hold down a job because you can't focus. The list of side effects is long for pretty much every single drug that the VA is going to give you, and you're going to get some of those side effects. And if you're taking antidepressants that depress you more, your suicide rate's going to go up. All of these, there's so much that goes into all of that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. You can't exclude anything. But I do agree with Roger about that. Hey, here's an open trough. Let me go get while getting's good. There is definitely a component of that in there. After my first back surgery, this would have been in 2007. One of my first checkups with the doctor was like, I can get you 100% disability right now, and you'll be out of the army in like 6 months.
No thanks.
You're not going to ask me like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. Like, geez.
I
Like,
mean,
okay.
and I obviously went on to serve, much, much, much longer and had a few more back operations. But there are definitely people that get those physicians that snatch up those opportunities. And I'm, hey, if that's you, fine, whatever the case may be. But there are always going to be people that exploit the system. There always are.
Yeah.
And then did you know
Yep.
that Dan's spine has been completely removed and he is more akin to a jellyfish at this point?
That is
I'm not even mad. I'm just impressed.
that is not true. But I do have an electronic implant that allows me to, live without scrutinizing
And
agony.
Blinding pain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So does it?
I am more machine than man at this point.
Can you
Twisted and
explain what
evil.
the electronic implant is? Because that's intriguing to me. I'm curious.
It's a neurostimulator.
Okay.
So it's I had several operations on my lower back. Just a career as an infantryman.
Yeah, I was just like,
And-
just life as an infantryman.
Yeah, and so I had a microdiscectomy first, and then I got looked at for some fusions and stuff like that. But I mean, like my lower spine looks like crushed gravel. So I got seen one more time because I couldn't stand up, I couldn't sit down, I couldn't lay down, I
Like a
couldn't do
jellyfish. Yeah.
anything. Like it was the most excruciating. And I have a pretty high pain tolerance, and no, like I could not
Yeah.
do anything. I mean, you were just completely locked up in agony. Actually, I went to the ER one time and they pumped me full of everything that they could, and I was still screaming. And they were like, "We cannot legally give you anything else."
Well, then illegally give it to me. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh,
I
my
got
word.
seen at BAMC out there in San Antonio. And they were like, "Hey, we think that you'd be a good candidate for a neurostimulator, which is just an electronic implant directly attached to your spine that sends electrical pulses through your nervous system or through your nerves, so that those pain receptors don't go to your brain. It just sends out a constant electrical pulse, so that basically you don't know that you're in pain. You are,
Yeah.
but you don't know it."
How do they figure that out?
Dude, I
Like,
don't know.
who discovered that?
Remember what I said about math
Like-
and science? Not this
Yeah,
guy.
I know.
It's pretty incredible, though, how the medical science being what it is, and of course, there's some areas that could use a lot more. But Dan, having what you have would have been basically a death sentence to anybody prior to our generation. I mean, you would have been so laid out, so hooked on painkillers, like it would basically a death sentence, if not an actual one. And now you live a more or less normal life, other than being you, of course.
But I was sitting there and I was debating it about whether I was going to do it or not. And the guy just like rolled over to me in his chair and he was like, "Hey, if this decreases your pain level by 5%, just 5%, would it be worth it?" And I said, "Yes." And he was like, "Then let's do it." And it is not a solution that has worked for everybody. I know a few people that have had neurostimulators and they still have pretty severe pain. I am very fortunate that I am relatively pain-free. I still have discomfort. I have to adjust the levels on it to adjust the strength of the electrical pulse. But like Roger said, I do live a relatively normal life. When you go from sneezing in the shower and needing to go to an ER to not needing to do that anymore, it's pretty great.
That's a 5%
Right.
improvement.
Yeah. 5%.
Yeah, so I definitely count my blessings.
Not service related.
Yeah, right.
Well,
That's how it happens.
For me, and I won't get into the specifics of my own medical stuff, but my father was, again, a career soldier, retired. In his generation, a lot of those guys should never filed for anything. It was just a generational thing. Like, they had a mindset that was, unless I'm missing a limb, I'm fine. And there's a couple things like back related that my dad tried for decades to, and the VA was just, they were so ornery about helping these old Vietnam era guys out that a lot of them just gave up. And so part of my experience was watching my dad get jerked around for years and years and years. And, so my career is starting to come to an end. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get all my medical records and everything together, and I'm going to make a claim, and I have evidence to prove in my claim, and I'm not going to let them do to me what they did to my dad.
And then you get those people that and I don't know how common this perception is anymore, but especially in the post-Vietnam era, it was, I don't want to take away from my buddies.
Yeah.
If
A lot
I
of that.
file a claim for my knee replacement,
Zero sum, right?
then my buddy who, lost both of his legs isn't gonna get his money. It's like, it doesn't work like that. But that's how their mentality was.
And I think it's kind of the way with everything where there's like the pendulum swings really far, both ways. Like before it was like the VA didn't want to help anybody, and now it's like the VA's just throwing money at everyone. And it's kind of like the pendulum's going to swing back the other way. And I think we're already starting to see that because they're starting to realize like this is costing a lot of money. And like we're not seeing a whole lot of benefit for the cost. The cost benefit analysis is heavy on the cost, low on the benefit, I think. I think that's what they're feeling right now, just based on the conversations I've had regarding, the VA and kind of what their thinking is. And it's like the pendulum swings hard. And I think it's going to start swinging the other way, and it may end up becoming more difficult to get disability. And I think, again, it's going to end up being a problem again because you're going to have guys that are legitimately disabled and need disability because they're jacked up for whatever reason. And they're going to have a hard time getting it because so many people have used and abused the system that's currently in place. But
do you think that pendulum swing is timed based off of kind of the end of the GWAT era, and then obviously there's kind of a delay on that because you've got guys who are retiring and all that? Do you think that lines up time-wise?
I think it does. I don't know that it's necessarily intentional. I think it's maybe just from the conversations that I've had, and this is just regarding, from people that work at the VA and people that know a lot of people that work at the VA as well. There's just a lot of concern over the fact that the veteran suicide rate has not come down significantly over the last 20 years. And I think they were hoping that making disability easier to get and helping provide financial stability to a lot of veterans would help kind of bring that down. And since 2005, the number has not gone down significantly. It's stayed pretty much between 17 and 22 veterans like a day is the average. So since it hasn't come down, I think they're just like, they're looking at 20 years of data and they're like, it's not working. What are we paying for? And I think they're just trying to be able to justify it. And I don't know. It's hard to kind of put a simple reason on it or a single reason. I think there's a lot to it.
Why don't you have all the answers?
Why not?
I know.
Why don't you have all the answers?
You have a social media platform. You should know everything.
That's right.
Yeah, you're a veteran.
Well, I may
with
not,
a social
but
media
I'll pretend
platform.
like I
you
do.
should know everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
You mentioned the RAND study earlier. I haven't looked at the latest one, but I know the previous studies had shown that most of the demographic of the veterans committing suicide is not, it's a little counterintuitive. It's not who most people think it is. It's not a 20 to 30-year-old GWAT veteran who's deployed 4 times and wounded. We have those, to be sure, but that is not the lion's share of these cases. It's you're way older veterans,
55
like
and
not
up.
necessarily Vietnam era, but it's kind of on that upper limit.
It's 55 and up.
Young guys.
Yeah, because in the study they talk about how the highest rate which again, rates are not counts. They're not the same, but the highest rate is the 18 to 34-year-olds. The largest amount is the 55 and up. I actually have, hold on. I took some notes. Imagine that. So,
which will be some GWAT veterans, but not a lot.
yeah, I mean, some of the older guys, but there was, I think it was, oh shoot, that's not even the right notes. Yeah, it was 3,860. There was 6,407 veterans in 2022, because that's the last year, the year the data was available. And it was 3,860 veterans were 55 and older that killed themselves. And the rest of them, so over half, because there were 6,407 total. So well over half were 55 and older. So that's, and I made that point in my, because that's not I kind of knew that, but I hadn't seen any concrete evidence, proving that. And I mean, it's a big problem. And I think, like I said, and I think a lot of it comes down to just isolation and guys just not wanting to be in community with other people. And then they kind of get, I don't know, they emotionally and physically and mentally isolate themselves, and it just eats them up, I think. And that's
Agreed.
yeah, I think that's one of the biggest problems, is just the isolation, and not just physical. It's because you can be in a group of people and still be isolated mentally and emotionally, and even spiritually. I talked about that as well, just being spiritually isolated, where you're just like, I don't have time for God. I don't have time for anything. Uh, and then they don't talk to anyone. If they talk to people, it's very surface level. And they feel like nobody understands them and nobody supports them. And in some ways that may be true, but in most ways it's absolutely not true, because there are people everywhere that would, want to talk with them and sit down with them and support them. They are, I think a lot of them are just tired, and or they have allowed themselves to believe that nobody cares about them and they're just alone. So I don't know.
I think, and this is based on a couple of conversations that we've had with some of our older guests, Vietnam, and we've even had a Korean War veteran. Some of these veterans, it does not, the impact or the trauma of some of the things that they experienced when they were younger doesn't hit them until they're much older. They may have gone through or had some pretty rough experiences when they were 18, 19, 20-year-old, private or lieutenant so-and-so. And then 50 years later, they just wake up screaming in the middle of the night. Or whatever the case is. Sometimes it's very delayed onset. And I think with that older demographic, maybe there's a link there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I think
you take
that
data was from 2022.
Yeah, that was the last year they had the complete, or most complete spectrum of
So
data.
take a 55-year-old, because that's the lowest end of the spectrum. 2022 would have been, remember, bad at math, would have
I was
been
told there'd be no math.
1967.
30, would have
think
been 34 in 2001.
Yeah. Chances
for
of them
9/11.
joining, yeah, lower.
Say they were a careerist. They came in at 18, so they came in mid 80s,
85.
yeah,
Something like that.
So
Yeah.
they may have been through, some of the smaller conflicts,
But
whichever
call them
round in Haiti,
Yep.
Panama,
Grenada.
Grenada,
Desert
Desert
Storm.
Storm, Desert Shield,
Yeah.
Somalia,
some stuff we don't know about.
and that's before 9/11.
Yeah.
And the GWAT. So, yeah, man, it could be some delayed onset stuff going on with that older tier.
Well, our Korean War veteran, I mean, he had a 60 plus years in between the time he left the service and the time he started having issues.
That's crazy. And it's,
Yeah. And
I find it really
he was only
interesting
in
that,
for years of.
Yeah. I find it really interesting because there's a lot of people that have come on and again on my posts, I get, comments all the time from people that are just mean and angry. And they get on there and they're like, you guys need to shut up and stop crying. Like the World War II generation never talked about their feelings and they turned out just fine. And I'm like,
Did they?
I don't
Did they?
think they did. I do not think
They
they did because if you talk to
they
their
ignored their
children,
kids and drank themselves to
yes,
death. Yeah.
talk to their children. Don't look at them. Don't look at the person who's putting up this image of I'm perfectly fine and I'm a big tough man. Look at their kids. Talk to their wives and ask them how their service member, family member was. And I mean, you'll start to get a picture of a an addict and somebody who was so emotionally closed off they couldn't truly show love to anyone. And eh, they did not prosper, in the way that they could have. There was actually a guy who I'm trying to remember where I saw this. He was talking about how he got invited to come on I think it was a podcast, and then they wanted him to go to Normandy, and he was like, "Nope," because he had landed at Normandy there on D-Day, and they wanted him to go, and he was like, "Nope, not
No
touching that part
thanks.
of my life." And they were like, "We think it'd be really good for you." And his family talked him into it. And he got to that beach and he just absolutely broke down. And he was like, I was
Melted.
terrified because
Yeah.
I knew, yeah, he's like, I knew that all of this was going to come up. And he said he really, and I think he didn't start doing any of this until he was in his late 80s. So this was a little while ago. He's passed on since then. But when he started dealing with it, he started talking about it and he started sharing with his family. And his family was like, we had no idea. We had never heard any of this. All we knew was he was in the army, he landed at D-Day. That was it. He never talked about it. And he said, when I finally spoke about it and I went there, I saw it and I started telling stories and walking through it again, he's like, the floodgates opened and I couldn't stop talking about it. So then he started going on a tour of the country talking about it, talking about not just his experience, talking about his experience of not talking about it and how it had negatively impacted him for decades. And he was like, y'all have got to like talk about it. It was killing me and I didn't even know it. And he's like,
Yeah.
I'm so much happier, healthier, and just better off after, opening up and talking about it. And he's like, and I wish for my family's sake, I would have done this, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, just because it negatively impacted his whole family for that long. And, it's I don't know if you guys saw, I posted a video today and Dana White actually was being interviewed by, I don't know who, some female. And he's like, I think this, and these are his exact words. He's like, I think the whole men's mental health thing is bullshit. And I read that headline and I was like, he said that? Really? That's weird. Like most in today's day and age, most people don't really kind of lean into it that way. So I was like, let me go see what he said. Maybe he said something else and they're just taking him out of context. And it's like, no, he absolutely said like the whole men's mental health thing is bullshit. And I was like, what? And you listen and he's like, it's so unattractive and weak, to get online and just talk about your problems and all this stuff. And it's like, he's got almost 11 million followers on Instagram and like 5 million followers on Facebook. And he has massive sway over, you know, a lot of things. He has, a lot of contacts and a lot of influence. And he's up there just talking about how unattractive it is to like talk about your problems and, and be open because you need to be an example for your kids. And, so, and I just talked about in my video, it's like, it's sad that we have somebody with this much influence who still has this opinion and still talks
Yeah.
about mental health this way. And it's like, you don't have to be a victim walking around crying all the time, telling everybody how bad your life is. But when you make a blanket statement about men's mental health being stupid or being weak or unattractive, like that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's
Well,
that
there's a right
really,
and a
yeah.
wrong way to do it. It does
Yeah.
require some nuance to be able to kind of parse that out. In my opinion, I think it's particularly for men, I think it's more of a spiritual problem than mental problem, which is a whole other conversation if you're interested in having. But uh, like you said, the World War II, the silent generation and the greatest generation, they were very stoic and didn't necessarily handle things as well as they could have, and they gave us the boomers. So
Yeah. Yep.
I said it.
Well, and I think again that the pendulum swung again, where it's like
Yeah.
over here, no one talks about their problems at all, right? I mean, you do not talk about it, like suck it up and deal with it. And then, 100 years later, here we are, and everybody's a victim and everybody's talking about their problems. And it's like, we've got to find the middle ground somewhere, because again, when you're over and everybody gets sick of everybody complaining and talking about their problems. So they start telling everybody stop being weak and shut up. And then it goes back over here to where nobody talks about it. But it's like, again, and I've said this, and there's a huge difference between being open about what's going on in your life and being a victim that just walks around, crying all the time, saying,
Yeah,
trying to get
sure.
sympathy from everybody and, get pity from everyone. And we all know those people exist. And no, I don't, it's frustrating when someone gets out and makes a blanket statement like that. And they're like, men's mental health is dumb. And it's like, wow, okay. Like, and I'm pretty sure in that interview, someone made the comment, they're like, I'm pretty sure at some point in this interview, he talks about how he's like been told by his therapist that he was like a sociopath. I'm like, first of all, why do you have a therapist? Like, if it's stupid.
Got him.
And if you're and if you're a sociopath, you have no empathy and you don't understand like regular human emotions. So of course you're gonna think that like, emotions are dumb. Like, come on, dude. Like, who cares what it's just ridiculous. But it's funny. You're just like, so you go to a therapist. Interesting.
Interest.
Oh man. But yeah,
there's just like with everything else, there's always a balance that you have to achieve. The woe is me crowd. I think some of them, genuinely need some help. And I think some of them are exploitative, or manipulative, where they're looking for that
Victimhood is
attention, and they're
currency
looking for that
in our culture.
sympathy, and they're looking for validation through views and likes and hearts or whatever. I think there's certainly a percentage of those people out there as well. Now, just because somebody is, the strong and silent type, Gary Cooper, that doesn't necessarily mean there's something that he's holding back or swallowing, repressing. Just means maybe he just doesn't have anything to say.
right.
Maybe he'll talk about it with other people, but not with you. So there's always some balance that's needed in there. I won't comment on Dana White's comments because I haven't heard them. So,
Well, Evan, you know that the comment section on social media is always a really great place for nuanced takes on hot topics. So
they get a little
if
spicy.
you want to achieve your
and they,
sanity, or if you want to maintain your sanity online, stay out of the comment section.
yeah.
Or just don't have
Yeah,
social media.
Right? Yeah. It gets pretty spicy in there. And that, but it's interesting because I found that a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times someone will come in there hot and they start, saying this is stupid, this, that, and they just go on and on and on. I have occasionally responded to them, either in a comment or in a message. I'll message them directly and be like, hey, I don't know if you meant to come across that way. I understand something in this post triggered you, and I apologize for that, making you upset. My intent with this post was this. And then I just respectfully kind of explain it to them. And I've had some people be like, I don't care what, F off. And then they just block me. And I'm like, all right, whatever, I tried. Well, most of the time, they'll kind of respond like defensively, like, yeah, well, I think your post is dumb. And I'm like, okay, well, you're entitled to that opinion, but I'm also not force feeding it to you. Like, you watched it and decided to like comment on it and all this other stuff. Like, anyway, eventually we will usually come around to having a good conversation. And then it turns out most of the time we're pretty close to being on the same page. They just didn't like something that was said or the way it was said.
you're in violent agreement.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, and it's hilarious when you get them to kind of come around by the end of the conversation when they're like, hey, thanks for chatting. Have a nice day. And it's like, wow, that could have been all been avoided had you just come on there and been like, hey, I disagree with this. Like, let's talk about it. And it's just, I mean, they want to get on there and just throw darts, and just be mean. And it's like, hey, we could just talk like human beings, right? Like just normal, regular, nice, polite, professional human beings and maybe have a good conversation. And it's, man, sometimes, not every
But
time, but a lot of
but
times I've
isn't
had
that
it happen.
emblematic? Yeah, isn't that emblematic of our politics? If everybody was coming to the table in good faith, then we could actually have a adult conversation about fixing things. But more often than not, people aren't coming in good faith. And so if one side is and one side is just wants to scream, you're not going to resolve anything.
Yeah.
Same thing with social media.
Yeah.
Yep.
When passions rule, they never rule wisely.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
That's
some
deep.
some people mistake being passionate about a subject with being knowledgeable about a subject.
Yeah. My volume equals being right.
Yeah.
Right.
The louder I
Yeah.
speak, the righter I am.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's, I've been guilty of that too. I've gone into some things, and, I've been spicy and I'll say something and then someone calls me out and they're like, hey, whoa, like, and then I'll be like, okay, yep, you're right. And then we'll have a conversation. I'm like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have responded that way. You're right. I should have taken a moment and collected myself before I just started, mashing keys on my keyboard, um, as one does. But it's
Putting
just,
down the support by fire position. Yes.
yeah, like, oh, I'm only doing, and then it's like, if I would have just taken 3 minutes and like read their comment again, it probably would have, precluded all of that. But, it doesn't
Have
happen all
you
the
ever
time.
responded to something on social media really hot and then started this whole string, and then you actually go back and reread the initial comment and that the other person wrote, and you realize you actually misread it, and you're like, oh.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I've done that before too.
Yep, I
You're like,
have, and
oh,
I
you
there's
actually
been a
said the
couple
opposite
times
of
that
what
I've
I
had
was.
to yeah, there's been a couple times that I've had to eat some crow and be like, "Okay,
Yep.
like, I have made a mistake." Now, however, generally, I have found that the people that I've done that with have been pretty receptive to my apology, and
Yeah.
I'll go to
Well,
them and be
that's the
like,
thing
"Hey."
is you have to actually own up to it.
Right, and
You
because
can't
I've
you
owned
can't
it.
double down on being wrong
Yes.
once you
Yeah,
know you're
yeah. When
wrong.
when you're like, I'm committed, I'm going all in, face first, we're going in. And it's like, I'll go there and be like, hey, and I don't generally do it publicly because I'm not trying to get attention. I will go to that person and be like, hey, I misread your comment, or I misinterpreted it, or whatever it was. And I'm sorry. Like, I made a mistake. I said some things I shouldn't have said. I think, X, Y, and Z, whatever. And then they're like, hey, I appreciate you owning it. And just owning a mistake and being able to say, yep, I screwed up. My bad. You were
It's
right.
refreshing.
Like, yeah, it is refreshing. It's super refreshing. Like, we had that happen with, my kid's school. We had an event, or there was an event recently, and there was some stuff that took place backstage at a theater performance that ultimately was very innocent, just kids messing around. It got blown way out of proportion. And my child was one of the ones that was being blamed for this stuff. And we came back to the administration and we were like, hey, after the whole thing blew over and we were able to kind of diffuse the whole thing, we went to the administration and we're like, hey, that was handled rather poorly. And we said it professionally and gently because we're also like, we have a good relationship with this school. It's a private school. We have a good relationship with them. And we were like, hey, that initial email was pretty spicy and probably could have been handled a little differently. And we went through and said these things, and we're like, in the future, we would appreciate it if it was less accusatory and more investigative. Like, I need some answers for this, not your son did this, and it's like, so
Yeah.
she responded very graciously and said, I made a mistake. I responded too quickly to the initial email. I should not have said what I said, and I'm sorry. And I was like, wow, that's amazingly refreshing. And it was like
Yes.
immediately all of the offense was just gone. And it's like, oh, okay, thank you. And it was
I
like,
think
and
there's something
we
about that in
said,
the New Testament. Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, right. Like just, it's amazing. It's almost like that's been written down for a long time and people just forgot. But like, it's so refreshing when someone is like, yeah, I messed up. I'm sorry. And it's like, wait, you said that. That's amazing. Like, that doesn't happen ever. So thank you. But it's yeah, rare, but it's very nice when it does happen. Yeah. So it's the veteran community is an interesting animal, to say the least. And there's been some people that I know. There's a couple guys that were veteran influencers that they're backing off because they're just tired and frustrated, and they feel it's like it to them it's a losing battle. And that's not necessarily, and the one guy that I'm referring to, who'll remain nameless, but he's like, it's so hard to stay motivated when it's just, you just keep getting bombarded from all sides when you try to say things that seem like common sense, like, yeah, there is fraud and we should probably take care of that, and yeah, like, these things should not be happening, or these things should be happening. And, veterans are like, you just hate veterans. And then the nonprofits are coming after you because you're saying that the money going to the nonprofits is, a lot of it is not actually helping veterans. It's just being poured into these people's pockets. And these CEOs for these nonprofits are getting, 350, 550, $650,000 a year salaries. And they're, not giving all that much money to veterans. And it's just,
Veteran complex. Yes.
yeah. So it's,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
it's not like a big, huge, massive organization that has shirts and shoes and hats and major events. It's not like they would use the money that was supposed to be for veterans and take their top 500 performers and send them to a lavish
On a junket. Yeah.
weekend long, party fest down in Miami. It's not
I'm
like
sure
that
that
would
would
ever
never
happen, right?
yeah, I'm
Right?
sure that would never happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that,
Well,
yeah.
one of the mantras Dan and I have on the show is that veterans, and we've kind of talked around this already, but veterans are, nobody's harder on veterans than other veterans. On the other hand, as we've discussed, there are a lot of civilians who feel like that veterans are a sacred cow and they don't want to go anywhere near something that could be controversial, like fraud in the VA, which is rampant. And so we're going to have to kind of help. I don't mean police in a literal sense, but we have to hold each other accountable and police each other. And so I don't know how, there's not an easy way to strike that balance of, veterans, cannibalizing each other and holding each other accountable. I don't know what that looks like, but it's going to have to come with, from within the house, I think.
Completely agree, because it's, I've said that before, where it's just, talking about looking introspectively and being like, what are we doing that's not helping us? And that's not just as a community, that's individually and as a community. Like, what am I doing to myself that is hurting me? What is the veteran community doing to itself that is hurting the entire community? And trying to figure that out, and actually being willing to say, like, yeah, this over here is not good and we should probably get rid of this.
No.
Doing this over here is not helping. We need to actually get rid of it, and, not just ignore it and continue funding it because we don't want to make somebody upset by cutting their funding off. It's like, yeah, looking introspectively and actually being willing to accept fault where, it needs to be accepted, and then apply the correct corrective actions would go a long way. But there's a lot of this stigma of avoiding responsibility. And that's been in the military and the government since the beginning of time. Like,
Yeah.
nobody wants to accept responsibility for like a major, problem. They would rather push it on down the line to somebody else. And,
It's not
until
hard to
we
do.
can, no, it isn't, especially when you're in a position where you have a lot of people underneath you. You can simply say, oh, well, Bob in accounting made a mistake. And he's like, yeah, well, Jen over in, records made a huge mistake. And then these people over here made a mistake. And that intake guy made a mistake, and they keep pushing it down to the next person. And nobody is willing to say, yeah, this was my fault. Or, I'm in charge of this organization and it happened under my watch. I need to take responsibility for my portion of it. And we need to find the other people responsible, and then, hold them accountable as well. But it's,
Yeah, but that's never what happens.
no, it isn't.
Even if the top even if the top person resigns, like this is my organization. There was a mistake that happened. As the leader of this organization, that ultimately falls on me, and so I'm resigning. Well, that doesn't fix the problem, dude. That doesn't fix the problem, because for that blame game to get up to you, it had to go through, X amount of levels to get there.
Yeah.
So
And
how is the problem
issue
fixed
with
just because you stepped down?
right? And usually when that
Mhm.
person steps
Or
down,
by
they step
firing
down.
by firing Joe Schmo intake guy, or
Yeah,
processor, or whatever.
some
How
plebeian
does
down at
that
the
fix the
bottom.
problem?
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that fix the problem?
And usually when the top guys retire or resign, it's like there's no repercussion. It's just like, oh, yep, and they go and live their lavish lifestyle without having to work anymore, or they get a
With the
job somewhere
government
else.
sinecure. Yeah.
Yeah, and they get a job somewhere else doing the same thing, probably for more money or whatever. And it's a
Go
big
sit on a
club
board
we're
at
not
one
in
of
it.
those nonprofits we just talked about.
That would never waste money, or
That would never waste money on junkets
No.
and t-shirts. Yeah.
that would never happen. Well, I have enjoyed our conversation, and I think,
Likewise.
yeah, we could probably have another conversation that would go on equally as long, if not longer. And yeah, probably still not have run out of things to talk about.
Oh no. Yeah. We can talk about anything and everything under the sun, but I
Right.
will tone out at math and science stuff. So,
Yeah. It's all voodoo
if you want to
magic
talk about
anyway.
space exploration and the adventurous spirit, then I'm all about it. But if you want to know about like how those machines are put together, nope.
Pass.
I'm not your guy.
Hard pass. It's all voodoo magic. It's just, yeah. If I don't understand it, it's just magic. So it's fine. This my
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Simple enough. Simple enough.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
How does that
Well,
rocket
we really
fly?
appreciate
Magic.
you. We really appreciate you having us on the show. And
Yeah, man, this is great.
we'd love to have you on ours sometime when you can work it out.
Absolutely. Yep. I would love to, and I appreciate other people that have a similar mindset, just trying to help people tell their stories, because, one podcast, there's no way could, even put a dent in the number of people that have stories to tell, and so it's nice to have other avenues for people to go to and, tell their story as well. And it's cool when I get to talk with somebody who's doing the same kind of stuff, and they, share a lot of the same values and beliefs. It's really neat to talk with you guys. And it's encouraging to me, because sometimes I get, I feel like nobody's listening, or I'm just talking to the wall. But when I talk with guys like you that are doing it, it's really encouraging to me. So I appreciate that. And you guys keep
Likewise,
doing what you're
likewise.
doing. And
Keep leading with common sense. Common sense will rarely take you wrong.
And keep making
that's
funny
dangerous.
videos. I love the one you did yesterday with the hand grenade in the grenade pit. Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Dude,
my word.
I think a lot of the world's problems would be solved if people could just laugh more.
And stop being so offended at everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't take everything so seriously. Just laugh.
None of us make it out of here alive, so let's just laugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No one's making it out of here alive, so just chuckle. A little more laughter goes a long
Amen
way.
to that.
Drop the pin. Drop the pin.
Yes. Just drop it. It's fine. We'll be fine. Or we won't. Either way, it's fine. We're either going to be fine, or it's suddenly no longer your problem. And then, it's fine. But I've really enjoyed having you guys on. So again, if you guys are interested in following Dan and Roger over at Tracer Burnout Podcast, can go ahead and plug your guys' website and all the stuff that you guys have, so they can find you.
Sure. So tracerburnout.com is probably the hub and the easiest way. Just go there. Everything's linked. We're on all the social media, except we are not on TikTok, but we're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We are on X, and we have a YouTube presence as well. So if you want to listen to audio versions of the podcast, we're on all of the audio platforms, and we're on YouTube and Rumble as well.
Awesome. Well, you guys know where to find them now, and I really appreciate you guys coming on. And yeah, we'll have you guys. I feel like we need to have you guys back on. I feel like there's more conversation to be had, but we'll try to make it work.
There's lots of cool stuff. We'll figure something out.
But yeah, but I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. Enjoy your Mother's Day, and yeah, we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Likewise, don't forget to call your mama.
Yeah, call your mom. All of you. You better do it. See you guys. Okay, don't.
Hey guys, quick reminder, if you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, go to whatever platform you listen to these podcasts on and leave a review. That's the best way to help us out. It gets a lot more traffic to us. So again, if you liked it, like, subscribe, and leave a review. All right, love you guys.
Bandit, quiet down. Grief, dog. Nobody tuned in to listen to you. I mean, they probably like you better than me anyway, but geez. So I don't know about you guys. I really love dogs. My dogs are their friends, their pets. But to some people, dogs can really make a huge difference, especially when you go through a company like Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs. Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs is a nonprofit dedicated to empowering veterans and first responders and other individuals with disabilities by providing highly trained service dogs that help people regain independence and improve their quality of life. These service dogs are trained to assist with all kinds of things from PTSD to traumatic brain injury to mobility challenges and seizure and diabetic disorders and even hearing impairments. So these dogs they just change people's lives. And if you are in need of a dog or you feel like you could use one, go to Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs and click on the apply for a dog tab and just see if you're even a good fit for one. Also, if you want to donate to assist in the training and housing and feeding and supplying of these dogs, go to Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs and go to the monthly Paw Prints Club. Your donation enables these critical mission operations such as veterinary care, housing, food, professional training, constant communication with the disabled individuals before, during, and after matching them with a service dog, and continued support throughout the service dog's life, including training and veterinary assistance long after they've received the dog. So if you guys want to make a difference in veterans' lives, this is a great way to know that your money is being used in that way, and your gift can make a life-changing impact. And remember, together, we can unleash the power to heal.